Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Flicks the Church Forgot. My name is Peter Laws. Now, I've been looking at a recent crop of re-releases from catalog releases from Vestron Video that have come out on Blu-ray. In the last episode, I looked at the crazy religious occult movie The Unholy from the late 80s. But now, after vomiting blood on the altars of the Catholic Church, Vestron Video decided to aim their barrels at that other institution next, which was the All-American Family, with a horror curio that is packed with pitch black wit and manic satire. In Parents, 10-year-old Michael is a quiet, haunted-looking kid living in 1950s suburbia. He wonders why his mom and dad always giggling at each other and, having sly winks and knowing nods across the dinner table. What is their secret? Well, it's pretty simple. Turns out they're cannibalistic psychopaths who fill the family dinner table each night with shanks of human leftovers. Grim. They do this as if it's the most natural thing in the world. Now, Michael struggles to make friends at school at the best of times, but home life is therefore also disturbing and haunting to him. He's got no escape, particularly because he has this odd dream of him falling into bed and sees it sink into a slow-mo pool of blood. The poor kid, life isn't great for him. What's interesting about Parents is that it can easily work as a straight-up horror movie. So, you could watch this as simply a film that makes the point that, hey, here's a particular young boy, his parents are psychopaths, that's what it's about. But there really are far more symbolic layers going on in Parents that make the film much, much more unsettling. For a start, there's a very clear parallel, I think, here in the film between cannibalism and sex, and how disgusting and distressing that thought can be to a kid in the context of your parents doing it. That idea is a shock indeed. The most scary scene, I think, in the film Parents is when Michael stumbles on his parents one night in the lounge. They're making love, and he says, "I'm thirsty," and the next shot is a booming, garishly white-lit Mary Beth Hurt looking up in her underwear, and we get this close-up. She's covered in sweat, but she has this weird, creepy red smear across her lips, and we don't know what's going on. Is it from eating human meat in an illegal cannibal-type way, or is it from eating human meat in a legal marital type way, if you know what I mean? And she's just got smeared lipstick on her face. We just don't know. But the director deliberately fuses these two things, makes it hard to tell. And for me, that's when the film really marries up these two themes of sexuality and cannibalism. The boy is just disturbed especially when it looks like his parents are kind of biting each other. The boy is equating these two things together. For all kids, at some point, of course, comes the realization that their parents are sexual beings, that they engage with a physical bodily act that displays something of the carnal and something of the savage between two otherwise normally squeaky clean people. That's a very strange thought. And that's what I like about Parents, the film. It just ups the ante with this metaphor and presents a child, yes, indeed, discovering that his folks do engage in a physical bodily act that is both carnal and savage. It's just that they physically eat people as well as having sex. And who knows, for a kid, maybe parental cannibalism and parental sexuality is pretty much on the same level of personal disgust. On this topic, by the way, I've got to tell you this bizarre story before I move on about parents being interrupted during sex. I was at a talk once on marriage where the speaker and his wife were laughing about this topic. They were on about putting a lock on your door in case your kids come in while the parents are performing The Beast with Two Backs, as Shakespeare would put it. But as he was telling this story, the father was telling this story, he giggled and he said, "Ha ha, once our son came in during the act when he was really young, and he saw us getting busy." Everyone in this room is laughing nervously, feeling embarrassed. But then the man added this part. He said, "The son had no idea what we were doing, so I just told him, 'Hey, climb on my back and treat it like a ride.'" And across the entire room, people's jaws just What? What did he just say? He quickly added, by the way, he was just kidding, as I recall. I think he said that. I'm sure he said that. I hope so. I just can't believe he said that. But yeah, that's always stuck in my mind, that shocking revelation. Anyway, the film Parents, therefore, explores a very interesting dynamic. most kids do wonder what's going on behind the polite smiles of grown-ups, especially for their parents, especially after dark when the kids have gone to sleep, but the adults stay up. What are they doing down there? Who are they becoming down there? Parents answers that with gusto. They kill and eat people is what they say. How fun to take such a common childhood curiosity to wild and psychotic extremes. Of course, what's ironic here is that one of the actors playing the parents, though one of the father, is Randy Quaid, the actor who has, in more recent years, become infamous for being on his wild rants and bizarre online videos. There's a kind of symbolic irony to all this. It's like life imitating art, if you will. That you get this very well-respected actor in the 80s and 90s presenting the appearance of a very normal, all-American type chap, in those decades. But then as we've grown up, as we've reached through adolescence, that mask has come off and we're finding another side to Randy Quaid. Funny how that seems to have played out in real life, like echoing the story of the dad in this. Not that I'm suggesting Randy Quaid, by the way, is a murdering cannibal by any stretch of the imagination. And not that I even know much about his situation. I don't know what he's going through. I don't know what's led him to do these things. So I don't want to pass judgment. It struck me as interesting that the friendly face of his character, the suburban dad, actually hides some pretty wacky thought processes. And it turns out the actor also did too. At one point, the parents put the kids to bed in the film, put Michael to bed, and this following exchange happens where Lily is the mom is going, bedtime, and the dad's like, come on, sport, I'll carry you, what's the matter with you? And the kid's saying he's scared of his room because it's dark, because of these nightmares he's been having about the bed of blood. And Nick says, Michael, the cellar's dark, the room's dark, everything's dark at night. Pretty soon, we'll turn off all the lights, and then it'll be dark everywhere. But then he adds this. He says, you really like the dark, don't you, Michael? Because you can be yourself in the dark. But there's one dark place we have to be very careful in. Do you know where that is? And he points at his head, laughing creepily. It's just a great moment, especially because it's flippin' Randy Quaid doing it. It's very interesting, I think, to see the reviews of parents when the film first came out. Plenty of critics were savvy enough, I think, to realize that the film is not just about thoughtless B-picture death and mayhem. Not that that's bad, but there's more going on. Many critics, thankfully, saw that it was taking pot shots at the innocent world of suburbia. But some critics still struggled that the film never pinned itself down to one aim. For example, Roger Ebert said this. He said, because the Parents speaks to a terror that lurks deep within our memories, Parents has the potential to be a great horror film, but it never knows quite what to do with its inspiration. Is it a satire? Is it a black comedy? Or just plain horror? The right note is never found, and so the movie's scenes coexist uneasily with one another. I see what he's saying, but that comes from a view that says a film has to decide what it is. It has to be horror, or parody, or comedy. This idea of films or books having to slot into an identifiable category comes up often. I personally enjoy films that are more generically slippery, that slide over from one genre to the next. I get a kick out of films that are slightly schizophrenic in this sense, a little bit like the characters from the film. Sometimes I wish there was more of it. Like the other day I was watching the Clint Eastwood Tom Hanks movie, Sully, the one about the miracle on the Hudson, which was a great film, by the way. But part of me, as I was watching that, was wondering, wouldn't it be so funny that if in the midst of this really serious movie, there was just a completely random slapstick comedy scene in it? I don't know, let's say Tom Hanks is giving evidence at his tribunal, and then he just goes to the toilet, sharts all over the wall, while a penny whistle goes, and then he goes back, straight back into the serious stuff. Now, don't get me wrong, I appreciate that would never ever happen in a serious A-list movie like that, but I was sitting there chuckling, thinking of the potential, of how crazy that would be if a film did that. I guess my wife never realized why I was sitting there. I never explained to her why I was sitting there laughing and giggling through a film about plane crashes. But I digress. The point I'm making is Parents does this. It indeed stretches the boundaries. Is it art house? Is it exploitation? It's horror. It's comedy. It's disturbing. It's funny. It's, well, guess what? It's life as seen through a 10-year-old's eyes. And to be frank, life for all of us is all of those things. Life is funny, disturbing, horror, comedy, parody. It's a crazy mix of genres. So I like it. I like the approach Parents takes. I know that it made an impact on many viewers when it first came out. I know when I first saw it, it was kind of, it messed with my head. It stirred a paranoia that many of us have shared in our lives. The fear that the parents you are living with, your loved ones, or growing up with may be more complex and therefore more unpredictable than you ever thought. There's a danger in that. That notion never really goes away. Parents with his cannibalistic extremes takes the idea, loads all of that with every type of shocking seasoning you can think of, which I just think works. I like what the critic Kim Newman said about Parents. He called it an unfairly neglected, perfectly creepy and disturbing suburban bizarro drama. I think that's well put. I saw it the first time round, but after checking it out a second time, I had no idea that the director of Parents was Bob Balaban. You'll know him, the actor from Seinfeld, Close Encounters, The Third Kind, The Grand Budapest Hotel. You'll have seen him in loads of films, and yet here he is. He directed Parents in the late 80s. Now, how appropriately cool is that to see one person as an actor turn out to be way more complex than you thought before? That's a very fitting revelation that fits in with a film with themes like this. So anyway, check Parents out, which comes with some great extras on the disc, by the way, including some nice exploration of the art design of the film, which is really good, and there's some amazing photography. The director of photography did a fantastic job. Parents is worth a look. Okay, so the next episode, I'm going to be looking at a third and final Vestron video release on Blu-ray, which is the class of 1999. But until then, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Rev Peter Laws. Visit peterlaws.uk for info on my books and stuff, including the non-fiction book, The Frighteners, Why We Love Monsters, Ghosts, Death and Gore, in which I interview a woman who drinks real human blood. She seemed alright. So, check it out, and until next time, don't forget the flicks the church forgot.